Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with Ozarks-born New York City jazz pianist Dalton Ridenhour. The New York City jazz label Turtle Bay Records is kicking off their new video series on the Back Porch. The series showcases the impressive talent of 8 exceptional jazz musicians hailing from all over the United States, and they get in depth with Dalton. We get into his life as a host, the history of his music, recordings, the future, and so much more.
Nice to speak with you.
Yeah, nice to meet you, man. Thanks for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Before we get into, new music, live shows, kind of the world waking up, things happening, and even your history, I want to know, especially now that we're looking at the calendar and it's March, 3 years ago, everything just melted away. And I'm curious how you survived that COVID pandemic period and how it's changed the way that you approach things now that we're coming out of it and things are opening up.
Well, I actually have a second gig as a computer programmer. So I was lucky in that I had a sort of second stream of income during that time. But I mean, I think like everyone, it sort of just sets in your mind how important it is, not only just to have things going on in life in general, but how important it is to get together and play music. And it's important for the musicians. It's important for the audiences. And I remember the first time there's a jam session in New York City at this place called Mona's. It's like a 1920s, 30s traditional jazz jam session, and obviously that went away for quite a while. And the first time we came back to play at Mona's, there was nobody in the bar. It was just the band and Aiden, who kind of like organizes the whole thing and is the bartender there. He was there, but it was just us, and we did a live stream show, and it was so weird to play this hot music and then be done, and there was no audience. So it's like the energy just wasn't there, and I think it just made everybody realize how important that is and how important music is in our lives. And for me as well, even though I had I had a gig going during that time with the computer stuff. It still was just a gaping hole in my life during that time, as it was for everyone else, I'm sure.
So now, with things picking up, you got the On the Back Porch series. Talk to me a little bit about this and kind of what else has been going on with you as the world wakes up and things kick back into high gear.
Yeah, so the work with Turtle Bay has been really great. I guess it's been going kind of for the past couple of years. I've been involved with them, and I've done a few albums. Did a swing album. Most of them with Sweet Meg, I guess. I did a swing album with Sweet Meg, and then we've done 2 Western swing albums. We just did a new one. That's not out yet, but we've finished recording, and that's been really exciting. All of the musicians that have been put together for these projects are just top-notch musicians, and most of them actually were already friends of mine, so that's been really fun. And but also I think the creative process and the just general approach to making the records has been pretty open. And Scott Asen, who runs Turtle Bay Records, has been despite the fact that the whole concept is sort of centered around swing music and like early jazz, the approach to making the records has been pretty creative and open-ended. So I've really appreciated that from him and from all the artists involved. So that's been really great. Aside from that, New York is back. They're there are lots of gigs. I mean, it's basically as it was before. And in fact, some of the gigs that I had played before COVID, some of them even feel like they have more energy now because people are just excited to be back and out and listening to live music. So, yeah, and I'm actually going to Europe next month for the first time since COVID. So, even some of that's starting to pick up again, the international traveling. So,
yeah, and I think that's the thing I've noticed too from my end in Kansas City. The bravado and the enthusiasm from the crowds are very palatable in a way that wasn't happening before, and I think that's a really good outgrowth of this. I think we should have always felt like that, but humans take advantage of things, or we just don't appreciate it as much as we should. And hopefully that comes through for the musicians as well. So, how did this jazz journey begin for you? Talk to me a little bit about where you were born and raised, and how the roots and seeds of jazz became who you are today.
So I was born in Rolla, Missouri, and I grew up. I grew up out in the country around there, but I went to school, elementary school and high school in St. James, Missouri, which is a small town next to Rolla. If anybody's familiar with Merrimack Springs, that's where that is. And my grandparents had a piano they were refurbishing in their shop, and I used to go out there and sort of plunk around on it. Actually, before that, I tried to play the guitar. I was into Elvis when I was like 6 years old, and I tried to play the guitar. The guitar hurt my fingers, and so I didn't really like it that much. And so I sort of gravitated to this piano that my grandparents had, and I used to just kind of plunk around on it. And I think they decided that, decided I should start taking piano lessons. So I took piano lessons for a little bit, but they eventually very quickly gave me the piano that they were going to be putting up in their house. And so I was very fortunate to have this really great piano at the outset of learning. And about 6 months into learning the piano, my dad asked if I could learn the Sting, which is the theme from the Sting, which is The Entertainer by Scott Joplin. And so we got the music for that, and I learned it, and I really loved that style of music, the ragtime style. And we quickly found out that there was a ragtime festival in Sedalia, Missouri, the Scott Joplin International Ragtime Festival. And so my parents took me up there, and when I was about, 9 years old, and I got to meet and hear all of these amazing piano players from all around the world who would come to this festival. And some of them sort of took me under their wing when I was young and encouraged me, and I think that was sort of indispensable. And then so I started going up to this festival every year and playing, and even I was kind of one of the only young kids at that time playing ragtime, and so I got invited to play at some other festivals in different parts of the country, which was really neat. But in tandem with that, my mother and my grandfather sort of set up a bunch of gigs for me around the area, and we would play, nursing homes and different places like fairs and stuff like that. And my grandfather would write like comedy sketches, and so we would do little comedy sketches, and then I would play a tune, right? And then we'd do a comedy sketch, and I'd play a couple tunes. So we had these little sort of variety shows going on, and sometimes they involved my whole family, my grandma and cousins, everybody else, or people tap dancing. And the very first gig I ever had, professional gig I ever had, was at the Doolittle Picken Park in Doolittle, Missouri, and it was basically a place where they had a lot of bluegrass groups and stuff going on down there. But my grandpa and I went and did our little variety show there. So yeah, my family was always very encouraging, and I was very lucky to have that upbringing, because I think it was a good combination of, getting to hear really good players and play, great music, being mostly ragtime at that point. But also I got a lot of stage practice, so I've never really, never really had stage fright or anything like that. And then after I sort of went from ragtime to, I learned about stride piano and Fats Waller and James P. Johnson, and eventually I played saxophone in the high school, or in junior high and high school bands, and I learned about Charlie Parker, and so I got into sort of bebop and more modern jazz, and I sort of learned via the history of jazz, basically, which was it was an accident that happened, but I'm kind of appreciative that I learned that way.
What was the very first live jazz show you ever saw that really blew you away, that made you either think, I want to watch this for the rest of my life, or I want to perform?
That's a hard question. I really, like, the first live music I saw was the stuff at the Joplin Festival. Not only were there, people who were playing solo piano stuff, but there was a lot of duo piano going on. So, like, sort of jamming, like playing boogie woogie with two pianos and stuff like that. So I think that was very impactful upon me. I do remember the first time I heard, there's a piano player from Chicago named Paul Asaro, and he's kind of the first person I ever heard play. He was playing in the style of Fats Waller. But, the style of Fats Waller is quite a bit different than ragtime, and you're starting to hear more jazz voicings on the piano and stuff, and also just more improvisation in general. And I remember the first time I heard him, I was like, wow, that just like set my ear off on another level. I also, there was a guy named Scott Kirby coming to the festivals, and at the time he was living in New Orleans and heavily influenced by a lot of New Orleans music. So I heard him playing lots of New Orleans style piano. And in addition, he was really into U.B. Blake's music. So I heard him playing a lot of U.B. Blake, and my ear sort of gravitated toward that. So despite, it's like all this stuff, Fats Waller and U.B. Blake sort of comes out of ragtime. And I think the fact that I was sort of in that scene sort of pulled me toward jazz, because I really was more excited to play things like U.B. Blake and James P. Johnson and Fats Waller than I was the ragtime. Although now that I've gotten older, I love all of it. I really enjoy playing classic rags as well. But yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the answer. I obviously, once I got into later stuff, I would go up to St. Louis and hear bands like Kenny Garrett and stuff like that coming through town, and that was very influential as well.
What stage did you finally make it on where you were like, wow, I'm here, I've arrived, I'm a professional musician, this is quite something? Do you remember when that moment happened?
Well, I think that I've always been a professional musician. I mean, I've been making money playing music since the gig at the Doolittle Pick and Park, I was 10 years old. And I remember clearly I made $50, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much better than mowing lawns. Which is obviously, when you grow up in rural Missouri, you learn about mowing lawns.
Yeah.
But and not just lawns, but fields. And so I always sort of had that, but I think that where it really hit was whenever I got to New York and I started getting called by people here, just to play gigs. I mean, because ultimately, I think all musicians just want to be accepted by their peers. And so when you start getting called by people that you admire, then you sort of feel like, okay, I've made it to a really good place. So I think it was less about being on a specific stage or a specific gig, and more about just like, feeling like, oh wow, that person I really love is calling me to play with their band, or they're calling me to sub for them, and yeah, that's probably it.
So in this process of being a professional musician, there's all these aspects that go into it. What's the favorite part to you? What do you like the best about this process?
For me, the most exciting part about music for me is just the process of learning. I mean, well, there's that side of it, and then there's just the side of, when you get with a really great band, particularly, well, it could be off the cuff or it could be something that's really worked out. Like I currently have this band, the Love Struck Balladeers, and we have a lot of like heavily arranged stuff, but we've done a lot of rehearsing, and so when we go out on stage, it's like it feels free, even though it's very highly rehearsed, right? But then there are also situations where you go on stage and somebody's calling a tune, but the band is really good, so there's just like a magic that happens because everybody has it together. And so I love that side of it, but I also really love the process of learning and just sitting at home with a record and figuring out what's going on. And there's an endless amount of knowledge in music, so it's a life process. So I know that I'm never going to get tired of doing that, and I'm going to be able to do it for the rest of my life. And to me, that's exciting because it's, it sort of gives some sort of purpose to life. Yeah, so.
Right on. So let me ask you this, very simply put, for something that you've dedicated your life to, why do you love jazz?
Gosh, that's a hard question. I mean, it's an easy question, and it's hard to articulate. I think I love obviously I love the improvisatory and spontaneity of it. But again, I also love the craft that it takes to get inside the different styles. I mean, that jazz is a very broad art form, right? There's so many different styles that go into it. And so to really be able to hang at the gig, you have to do a lot of studying across all these different styles. And I think that's a fascinating process. I really love that. Like, somebody calls me to do, a bebop gig, I'm going to sit down and turn on Charlie Parker and just get inside, like what's happening with Charlie Parker, what's happening with Bud Powell. Somebody calls me to do 1920s stuff, I'm going to get inside Bix Beiderbecke and Fats Waller and James P. And the range is it's really wide there. Like the way I'm a piano player, so I think about piano, but the way you approach the piano across those different styles it's quite broad, and it just keeps it really exciting. So yeah, I love that. I mean, I love that jazz is it's a true American art form, and I love that we have the opportunity to sort of keep that going and to honor the great musicians who came before us by continuing to spread the music. So yeah, it's a hard question. I mean, I just love it. Like it's swing. I mean, a great swing feel is just something that can't be beat. So, if I can get lost in that. I can put on, that record Ben and Sweets, with, there's a few tunes on there, Better Go, and a few other, yeah. I mean, I put that on and it's just like, life can't get any better than listening to that. So that's what jazz is, right? Jazz is that Ben and Sweets record.
Absolutely it is. So let's kind of shift into a little bit here of you and your life, and if you have a dream tonight, you run into a younger version of yourself, and based on what you've lived through and the wisdom you've gained, you could give that younger version of you a piece of advice. What would you say to your younger version?
Oh gosh, I would say practice more and practice more and be more organized about learning, and be more open-minded about learning. Because when I was a kid, I was pretty close-minded about music. I mean, I got into ragtime and boogie-woogieing these specific styles of piano, and I didn't really go out of that too much. I did some, but just my mind was narrow. And when I went to Berkeley for my undergrad, and when I got there, it's sort of like I got put into all these different musical situations and sort of started to see the art in getting inside a specific style. And so now I just love playing just about anything, and including country music, which I grew up with country music, but I never really considered it that serious when I was young. But now it's like I study country music as an art, and so I think that I would tell myself to sort of keep my mind open, and that's
cool.
I guess.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So if you could get into a jazz DeLorean and go back in time and see a dream show in the history of jazz, where are you going? Who are you going to see?
Probably U.B. Blake when he was young. I mean, I always wanted to meet U.B. Blake, but I also would have loved to sit and listen to him play. Back in the 1920s, to hear him play the Charleston Rag in the 20s, I think that would be a dream. And also Art Tatum. I think any piano player would want to go back and sit next to Art Tatum and witness that what he was able to accomplish in front of your face. It's like we're lucky we have some videos of these people, but it just doesn't quite capture it, right? So I would say
for sure.
Yeah. And I mean those are both, I'm a piano player, so those are both piano things, but there's so many. Obviously Charlie Parker, come on. I found out I used to go camping at the Lake of the Ozarks with my family and we went up there kind of every weekend, and we went to this place called Camp Bagnall, and I found out recently, because many of us know the stories of Charlie Parker going down into the Ozarks to Woodshed, right? He kind of leave town and get out of the city and go down there and practice. But I found out that there was a club, some dance club, just outside of Eldon, Missouri, where Charlie Parker used to play. And it was like a couple miles up the road from where I used to camp, and that just blows my mind, right? I'm like, wow, I can't imagine rolling up into Eldon, Missouri, and Charlie Parker's about to hit, So that's a great visual. Yeah, and I knew that. That's where everything really, really took off for him. So that is a trip, especially for how far he went. Just the fact that New York was his stomping ground. A lot of people kind of forget the Ozark period, so that's wild. Yeah, I can't remember the name of the club, but yeah, you can look it up.
yeah, sure. Yeah, and I'm going to probably do it myself. So let's get to the essence of you and who you are. Everyone out there has a perception of you, your family, your friends, fans, colleagues, but you're the one living your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I like to think of myself as a generally positive person, and I like to be around people. I'm sort of a mix. I like to be around people, but I also love to just stay at home on a Friday night. And I think a lot of that has to do with I don't consider myself a I don't consider myself a person who gets bored. I never get bored. And thanks to music, right? I mean, come on, how can you get bored when you have all this music to listen to and work on it? So
Yeah.
I'm not a bored person. I'm always I've always got something going on in my head or in my life, and that sort of that sort of brings along friendships and relationships with it, because obviously if you're going out and playing, you're gonna make friends that way. So I guess I see myself as a fairly positive and hopefully friendly person, and I'm a very family oriented person. I mean, I try to visit my family as much as I can, and so yeah, I don't know. That's I think that's the hardest question anybody's ever asked me.
Yeah, and
it's hard to talk about yourself in that way, right?
Yeah, and it always seems like it needs to be a pretty voluminous answer, but usually the brevity is some of the best stuff out there. So, Dalton, thank you for opening up about the series, about your life and music. Good luck with it. Good luck with everything as we move forward here in a new, hopefully post-pandemic time. Yeah,
thanks. And regarding the series, I encourage everybody to check out turtlebayrecords.com. There are a lot of great projects going on, and yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. So
that's more specifically, if anyone out there wants to learn more about you, pick up your albums, and locate this series, where should they go?
Yeah, turtlebayrecords.com, they can go there for all of that stuff. I have my other project, Love Struck Balladeers. You can find information about that band at lovestruckballadeers.com. That's like Lovestruck and then Balladeers, Balladeers, lovestruckballadeers.com. And I have a personal website, but I don't really keep it up to date. So
Okay.
Those two places are probably the best. Yeah.
Right on. Perfect. Dalton, thank you for opening up, man. Best of luck with everything.
And actually, I forgot one. I do have a solo record, and I think they still have some copies at rivermontrecords.com. And you should definitely check out Rivermont Records. They have tons of great early jazz and ragtime piano recordings there. So
okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Yep.
Cool, man. Again, thanks, Dalton. I appreciate it. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and minds in Rolla, Missouri, New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Dalton for his time, energy, and story. If you want to hear more Neon Jazz interviews, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us at YouTube. For everything Neon Jazz, go to theneonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.